Let's continue where we left off, discussing the events of August 26th in the South China Sea. Why are we turning this into a series? I believe the entire month of August marked a mutual probing between China and the US during this South China Sea conflict. It's like two martial arts masters preparing for a final showdown, where both victory and survival are on the line. However, since both sides are major powers, they can't just start fighting directly. Instead, they test each other to gauge the other's strengths and weaknesses. Looking at August, the Philippines acted as America's hand, constantly provoking China. They bumped ships, sent the 9,701 vessel to anchor at the Angin Shoal for over 100 days, and tested how China would respond, whether China would dare to take action and whether it had the resolve to resist. Even Japan played a part in July with the Ryogetsu incident, where they sent a warship into Chinese territorial waters. This too was a test to see how China would react, where its bottom line was, and how strong its resolve was to strike back. But Big Beautiful ran into an unexpected problem this time. They initially wanted to prod the Panda China, expecting it to be passive, but when they found resistance, things didn't go as planned. They thought, if China doesn't fight back, we can make demands when Sullivan visits China on August 27th. But as soon as they poked, the Panda struck back hard, catching them off guard. They were shocked, thinking, "Hey, I was just testing you. Why did you strike so fiercely? Do you realize that's not allowed?" Well, the best way to deal with a bully is not to reason with them but to fight back. That's exactly what happened this time. On August 26th, after the Philippines stirred things up, China got genuinely angry. By morning, China sent over 40 Coast Guard ships to surround the 9701 vessel anchored at the Angin Shoal, completely blocking it in. The Philippines planned to send two more Coast Guard ships to break the blockade, but when they arrived, they were shocked to see a sea of ships. There was no way to break through, let alone squeeze in. The Philippines thought, what's going on here? Are they dismantling the 9701 vessel? But with the blockade so tight, they couldn't see anything. So they launched a drone from their warship to take a look. Now, let me clarify, this drone wasn't like China's large military-grade ones. China uses high-end drones that combine reconnaissance and attack capabilities. The Philippines, however, launched a basic consumer-grade quadcopter, like the ones I bought for my son recently. It's the kind of drone you buy for fun, costing just a few thousand yuan in China, cheaper than a smartphone. But for the Philippines, this was cutting-edge military tech. In the current Russia-Ukraine conflict, they've been using these consumer drones strapped with explosives to take out tanks, bunkers, and infantry squads. So, for the Philippines, this drone was high-tech. They launched the drone, flying it up to see what was happening inside the blockade. But as soon as the drone got in the air, a flash of light streaked across the sky, and the drone was gone. The Philippines was stunned, wondering where their drone went. Then the command center called them, telling them to withdraw immediately because China had fired a laser and shot down their drone. The laser was fired from a Coast Guard ship, marking the first act of fire, and they were ordered to retreat. How did the Philippines know this? Because Big Beautiful had been watching the whole thing from space via satellite. The entire operation was directed by the US, and they had a clear view of everything. Initially, Big Beautiful was watching with amusement, waiting to see how China would respond when the Philippines launched the drone. Will they issue a warning? They wondered. But just as they were watching, a blue beam of light struck the drone, and within a second, it was shot down. Big Beautiful was shocked, thinking, "Hey, shouldn't you at least give a warning before firing?" And that blue light came from a Coast Guard ship. China already has laser weapons on its Coast Guard ships, and we don't even have them on our Arleigh Burke-class destroyers yet. They realized China had laser weapons everywhere, something that once seemed like sci-fi. For many of us, growing up watching Japanese sci-fi shows, laser weapons were the stuff of childhood dreams. But on August 26th, those dreams became reality. China fired its laser cannon, without warning, marking the first time in human history a laser weapon was used at sea to shoot down an enemy target. Some might not understand the significance of using a laser weapon to take down a small drone. They might think, couldn't the US do that too? But the answer is no, they can't. Small drones are notoriously difficult to deal with. From what we've learned in the Russia-Ukraine war, several factors make these drones hard to target. First, the radar needs to detect them, But due to their small size and heavy use of plastic materials, their radar cross-section is tiny. If your radar can't see them, you can't lock onto them, which means none of your weapons can aim properly, whether it's a laser, a cannon, or a missile. Even if radar does detect the drone, distinguishing it from birds is another challenge. Small drones and seabirds have similar radar profiles, speeds, and flight patterns. You can't just open fire on everything that appears on radar, it would cost a fortune. That's why these small, slow drones are a real nuisance in combat. So why was it different this time? As soon as the drone took off, it was hit by a laser. How did China manage to lock onto it? The US couldn't do this because the issue isn't just about technology, it's about the market. You see, China manufactures 70% of the world's small drones, and the remaining 30% are assembled elsewhere using Chinese parts. So, there's no escaping it. The drone the Philippines launched was made in China, including the chips inside. Some might argue, but isn't China behind in chip manufacturing? That's a misunderstanding. China faces challenges in producing chips below 7 nanometers, which are mostly used in smartphones and consumer electronics. But for chips above 7 nanometers used in missiles, drones, and display screens, China dominates the market. So, who's the real chip superpower? Isn't the world just full of irony? 10 years ago, China was content buying US chips without any plans to manufacture its own. Then one day, the US decided to block chip sales to China, thinking it could cripple China's progress. But 10 years later, China now dominates the market for chips above 14 nanometers. The harder you try to control something, the more it slips out of your grasp, moving in the opposite direction of your intentions. This is how the world works, but Western civilization doesn't seem to understand that. Back then, they didn't want us to enter the chip industry. They imposed all kinds of blockades, sanctions, and even carried out assassinations. But what happened? The huge Chinese market, with over 1 billion people, was left wide open. When there's a market, there's demand, and naturally, large amounts of money will flow in to fill that demand. Capital always seeks profit, and no one can stop the desire for making money. It's just like with our tea and silk back in the day. We wanted to monopolize those industries, to keep them as our exclusive business, but what happened? Tea seeds were stolen, and now they're grown all over the world. Silkworms, mulberry trees, even our silk workers were taken away at high prices. So, true monopolies don't exist, and blockades never last. The only way is to keep progressing, to always stay at the cutting edge of technology, so you can earn money effortlessly. There's no such thing as a magic bullet that guarantees success forever. That's why our chip technology has now become a trump card. Just think about it. Almost all drones around the world are made by us, and they all use our chips. And the most important chip in a drone is the navigation chip. Of course, we know where every drone is. So, on August 26th, when that drone from the Philippines took off, we shot it down right away. Was it radar that detected it? Probably our systems did, and so shooting it down was a natural response. But what made the Philippines so excited was that they saw it as the first shot fired. In their eyes, we fired the first shot, and that's a big deal. Think about it. For years, most conflicts in Asia around China have been fought with non-lethal weapons. Take the skirmish in the Galwan Valley, with spiked clubs and body armor, or the South China Sea, where people were still using selfie sticks. You can't compare it to the Middle East, where the Houthis have hypersonic missiles. Why is that? It's because no one in Asia dares to fire the first shot. Who set that rule? We did. Long ago, we declared, we will never fire the first shot, but we added, you won't get to fire a second one. People didn't believe it at first, but then Vietnam decided to be the first to test us. At the Battle of Johnson South Reef, Vietnam fired the first shots. Bullets hit our helmets, and the battle began. Vietnam sent 3 warships, including a tank landing ship. We sank all of them. The Vietnamese suffered 400 casualties, and we captured 14 prisoners, including a senior officer. From then on, Johnson South Reef has been ours, fully controlled by us. That's the consequence of firing the first shot. The whole world saw it clearly. If you dare to fire the first shot at us, you face the consequences. That's why, even now, everyone around us is still using non-lethal weapons. They've heard that we're confident in our skills. If they lose in hand-to-hand combat, they'll just accept it. But this time is different. China fired first. And not just with any weapon, but with a laser. It seems China is really angry this time. The Philippines was thrilled. This time, China fired first. If the US-Philippine Mutual Defense Treaty doesn't apply now, when will it ever count? Now the ball was in the US's court. The Philippines looked at the US and said, "It's your move. Decide what to do." The US thought, well, this should count as firing a shot, right? If I don't act now, my credibility in Asia will be ruined. So, they decided to check things out. The US was already conducting a joint military exercise in southern Indonesia with Australia, Singapore, South Korea, the UK, France, and New Zealand. Though they were in the southern hemisphere, it wasn't too far from the South China Sea. How about we head up there to see what's going on? Even if we don't fight, we can at least show our presence. So, the US ordered its forces to shift their Super Garuda Shield 2020 for joint military exercise closer to the South China Sea, where the Chinese fired their lasers. The participants were a bit confused. We came here to exercise, and now we're heading into a potential war zone. But when the boss speaks, you have to follow orders. Reluctantly, they started moving, passing through the Java Sea toward the direction of Palawan Island. This was around 11 a.m. on August 26th. However, just as they started moving, someone reported, "Sir, we spotted a Chinese warship about 30 kilometers from Palawan." The U.S. commander was stunned. 30 kilometers. That's right on our doorstep. What ship is it? The reply came, "It's a Type 055 destroyer, probably the Dalian." The commander's face fell. This is serious. China sent a Type 055 to what was supposed to be a Coast Guard scuffle. That's overkill. For context, the Type 055 destroyer is no joke. It has 112 vertical launch cells. One full salvo from this ship could sink all our 10-plus ships in the area. Even if we decided to go all in and fire anti-ship missiles, we'd likely all be sunk before it takes any significant damage. Why? Because it's equipped with YJ-21 hypersonic missiles. We'd be shooting back with Harpoon Block E's, which are subsonic. They wouldn't even make it through the Asterisk Type 055 Asterisk's air defenses, let alone its laser weapons. Yes, the Chinese Coast Guard already has lasers, so it's safe to assume the Asterisk Type 055 Asterisk does too. And lasers don't run out of ammo. If they can shoot down drones, they can easily take out subsonic anti-ship missiles. There's no way to win in this situation. While the U.S. commander hesitated, another urgent report came in. "Sir, we've got a problem. China has infiltrated our most important naval base in Asia, Sasebo. Their Y-9 electronic warfare plane was just detected over Sasebo at 11:29, and they've hacked our C4I systems. No aircraft can take off. Our command screens are filled with false targets." The U.S. commander went pale. "I was just testing the waters, and now I've taken a direct hit. How am I supposed to maintain my standing here after this?" At this point, you might wonder what exactly happened over Sasebo. We'll continue that next time.